My daughter-in-law slapped me, and my son just stood there watching. The slap stung, but the real pain came from the way my son looked at me. Not with concern. Not with love. But with the kind of cold distance you'd show a stranger on the street. This is the same boy I raised alone. The child I worked 3 jobs for. The son whose future I built with my own hands. Yet there he was, silent, frozen, while his wife demanded my house keys like she owned the place. And in that moment, as I stood there holding my bruised cheek, I realized something I never wanted to accept. I didn't just lose my home that day. I lost my son too. I was standing in my kitchen, folding laundry the way I've done for the last 40 years, when I heard the front door slam hard enough to shake the walls. That slam. I knew it wasn't my son. He never slammed doors as a child, but she did. My daughter-in-law, Hannah, stormed in first. My son, Michael, followed a few steps behind, shoulders tense, eyes low, like he wasn't sure whether he should walk in or turn back. I didn't ask any questions. I just smiled the way any mother would. "Hey, sweetheart. Dinner's on the stove. You two must be." Before I could finish, Hannah snatched the keys from the hook on the wall, my house keys, and held them up like she had discovered a weapon. "These," she said, "belong to us now." I actually thought she was joking. I laughed. That was my mistake. She stepped closer, too close, and said, "You don't get to live here anymore. We talked about this. You're moving out." My heart actually skipped. Moving out? "Hannah, this is my home." And then, the slap. Not a push. Not a shove. A full, open-handed slap across my face. I gasped, not from the pain, but from shock, and my hand flew to my cheek. I looked at my son. He froze. He didn't protect me. He didn't speak. He didn't even blink. He just whispered, "Mom, don't make this harder. Just give her the keys." And that was the moment. The exact second. When my entire world tilted. My own son. The boy I raised alone. Stood there and let someone else tear me apart in my own home. That was the day I realized, the betrayal had already begun long before she slapped me. I kept waiting for Michael to step forward. To defend me. To raise his voice even a little. To say, "Hannah, stop. That's my mother." But he didn't. Instead, he stood behind her like a shadow. A quiet, obedient shadow. As if he had no right to speak unless she allowed it. I tried to steady my voice. "Michael, sweetheart, you're really letting her talk to me like this?" He looked at me with tired eyes. Eyes I didn't recognize anymore. Eyes that used to light up when I walked into a room. "Mom," he said softly. "Please just cooperate. It's better this way." Better for who? Better for him? Better for her? It certainly wasn't better for me. Not when the house I built with every penny. Every night shift. Every sacrifice. Was suddenly being ripped out of my hands. Hannah took a step forward, waving the keys. "You're old. You don't need a place this big." "We do. And Michael has already agreed." I felt my throat tighten. Already agreed? The boy who used to hug me every morning? The child who cried on my shoulder at his father's funeral? The young man who once promised me, "Mom, when I grow up, you'll never have to worry again"? Had he really agreed to throw me out? I looked at him again. This time not as my son, but as a stranger wearing my son's face. "Michael, did you really say that?" His silence was louder than any answer. He looked down at the floor. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Just tired. Like he had already chosen his side. And it wasn't mine. I felt something inside me crack. Slowly, like the first break in a frozen lake. Hannah crossed her arms. You have till the end of the week. Pack up. I whispered. This is my home. She smirked. Not anymore. And Michael, my only child, just stood there. Silent. Still. Watching the woman he married erase the woman who raised him. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just losing my home. I was losing my son piece by piece. I didn't argue. Not because I agreed. But because I was too stunned to even understand what had happened. I walked past them, slowly, toward my bedroom. My cheek still burned from Hannah's slap. But my heart felt numb. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it. For the first time in my life. My bedroom didn't feel safe. I looked around the room I had painted with my own hands. The quilt I stitched myself. The rocking chair where I held Michael as a baby. The curtains he once tugged on when he learned to walk. Everything in that room held a memory. A piece of my life. And yet that night, it all felt like it belonged to someone else. I sat on the bed and listened to their voices outside. Hannah was speaking loudly, boldly, like she wanted me to hear. She's holding us back, Michael. Your mother is the reason we can't start our own life. It's time she leaves. And my son. My sweet boy. Whispered back. I know. I know, but she won't go easily. Those words. They didn't just hurt. They shattered something inside me. He wasn't being manipulated in that moment. He was cooperating. The boy who once begged me to sleep beside him after nightmares. Now saw me as the problem. I pressed my hand to my chest. My heart felt heavy, too heavy. Like it was sinking deeper into my ribs. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I just sat there, staring at the door. Expecting it to open. Expecting my son to come in. Sit beside me. And say, Mom, I'm sorry. But he didn't. Instead, the only sound I heard was the metallic click of the front door locking. They had locked me inside my own home. As if I was the intruder. And in that silence, I realized this wasn't a bad moment. This was the beginning of something much worse. I didn't sleep the entire night. When the sun came up, I was still sitting on the edge of the bed. Hands folded in my lap. Like a guest waiting for permission to move in her own home. I heard footsteps in the hallway. 2 sets. Slow. Purposeful. Not the soft, excited footsteps of the son I raised. But the heavy, controlled steps of a man who had already chosen his side. The door opened without a knock. Hannah walked in first. Arms crossed, chin lifted like she owned the place. Michael followed behind her. Eyes lowered. Avoiding my face like he couldn't bear to see what he had done. Or worse, like he didn't care. Hannah spoke with that sharp tone of hers. Well? Did you pack? I looked up at her. Calm. Quiet. Almost empty. Pack? I whispered. I didn't agree to leave. She scoffed. Oh, please. Don't start this again. You knew this was coming. My voice trembled. This is my house. She smiled. A cold, triumphant smile that made my stomach twist. Michael already explained this. We're taking over the mortgage. We're renovating. You won't fit into our plans. It's time for you to move on. Move on. Like I was an old piece of furniture they were tired of looking at. I turned to my son. Michael, honey, is this really what you want? He didn't answer. He just closed his eyes slowly. Like he was trying to block out my voice. Hannah stepped closer. You have 2 days. Pack your things. Don't make this harder. I felt something warm travel up my throat. Hurt, pain, humiliation. But I swallowed it back. I refused to cry in front of them. Instead, I stood up. Slow, steady. And walked past them both. Not because I accepted their decision. But because I realized something far more painful. I was no longer safe in my own home. And if I wasn't careful, they could do much more than slap me or steal my keys. They could erase me entirely. I walked into the hallway. Their footsteps still behind me. Their whispers like needles pricking my back. The house felt smaller. Colder. As if the walls themselves were embarrassed to witness what was happening. I reached my closet and opened the door. For a long moment, I simply stared at the shelves. The photo albums. The old sweaters. The gifts Michael made me in kindergarten. These weren't just belongings. They were my life. And now I was expected to pack my life into cardboard boxes. Because my daughter-in-law decided she didn't want me here. And my son decided she was worth more than I was. I picked up the first box. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped it. Behind me, Hannah leaned on the doorframe with a smirk. Good. You're finally being reasonable. I ignored her. I placed the first item into the box. A framed picture of Michael at age 7. His front teeth missing. His smile wide. His arms around my waist. My throat tightened. How did the child in this photo become the man who silently watched his wife humiliate me? I placed the picture face down in the box. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I couldn't bear to look at the boy I lost. Michael hovered behind Hannah. Hands in his pockets. Shoulders tense. Looking like a prisoner. Yet choosing to stay in his cell. I whispered. Michael, can we talk? Just you and me? Hannah cut in immediately. No. Whatever you want to say, you can say it in front of me. And Michael didn't say a word. Not even. Let her speak. I sat down on the bed slowly, the box beside me. Michael, I said softly. Do you really want me gone? His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. That silence. That awful, suffocating silence. Told me everything. I felt something break inside my chest. Something I had held onto for decades. Hope. I stood up again. Picked up the next belonging. And placed it into the box. Not because I wanted to leave. But because suddenly, I realized a horrifying truth. My son wasn't going to protect me. He wasn't going to stop her. And if I stayed, I would be at their mercy. As I packed the third item, a tear finally fell. Silent, heavy. Onto the cardboard. And I whispered to myself. So this is what it feels like to lose your child. While he's still standing right in front of you. I kept packing. Slowly. Quietly. One memory at a time. But every few minutes, I would hear Hannah whisper something to Michael in the hallway. Low, sharp sentences meant to cut. She's pretending to be weak. She's doing this to guilt you. She had her time here. She needs to go. Every word was poison. And Michael. He drank it like it was truth. I finally stepped out of my bedroom, holding a small stack of folded clothes. I expected my son to look at me, to meet my eyes, to show even a flicker of emotion. But he didn't. He just shifted uncomfortably, as if my presence was the inconvenience. Hannah blocked the hallway with her arm. "Where are you going with that?" I swallowed. "To the living room. I need space to pack." She shook her head, like I was a child who needed correcting. "No. You stay in your room. We don't need your things spread everywhere." I felt my jaw tighten. "This is my house." Her smile twisted. "Not anymore." I looked at Michael, begging him with my eyes, pleading silently for him to defend me, to say something, anything. But he just rubbed the back of his neck, looked away, and muttered, "Hannah's right, Mom. Just stay in your room and finish quickly. Finish quickly. Pack quickly. Leave quickly." I wasn't his mother anymore. I was a problem to be removed. I walked back into my room slowly, closed the door, and sat on my bed. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something worse than pain. I felt alone. Truly alone. No husband. No siblings. No parents. And now, no son either. All I had in that moment was a room full of memories, and a future that suddenly looked terrifyingly empty. I pressed my shaking hands together and whispered into the quiet, "God, I don't have anyone left. Please, show me what to do." And just then, as if in answer, my phone buzzed. One message. One name on the screen. One person I hadn't heard from in months. My older cousin, Margaret. The only family member who ever truly believed me. And in that moment, I didn't know it yet, but her message was about to change everything. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I wiped my tears with the back of my wrist and forced myself to breathe before opening the message. It was from Margaret, my cousin. The only one left from my side of the family. The only one who ever checked on me without wanting something in return. Her message was simple. "Evelyn, sweetheart. I had a dream about you last night. Just wanted to ask, are you okay?" I stared at those words. Are you okay? The question I had been silently wishing my own son would ask me for years. And it came from someone who lived 3 towns away. I typed back slowly. "No. I'm not okay." I hesitated. Should I tell her? Should I explain the slap? The humiliation? The fear sitting heavy in my chest? Before I could decide, another message appeared. "I'm coming to see you today." My heart skipped. Someone, finally someone, was coming for me. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. Behind my door, I heard Hannah's voice again. Sharp, annoyed, irritated at the sound of my phone. Who is she texting now? Probably trying to get sympathy. "Michael, don't let her manipulate you." Manipulate? Me? After everything I had given up for my son? I clutched the phone tighter. Margaret was coming. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something I thought I had lost. Hope. But then, a sudden knock on my bedroom door. Not gentle. Not polite. 3 hard bangs. Hannah's voice. "Open the door. Now." I froze. My heart pounded. What did she want now? Before I could answer, she added. "And bring your phone. Michael wants to see something." My blood ran cold. They knew I was talking to someone. They knew help might be coming. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized they weren't just trying to take my house. They were trying to isolate me, completely. I stood perfectly still, my hand frozen around my phone, as Hannah kept banging on my door. "Evelyn," she snapped. "Open the door. And bring the phone with you." There was something different in her tone this time. Not just cruelty, but urgency. Almost fear. Like she suddenly realized I wasn't as alone as she thought. My heart hammered in my chest. I slid the phone into my sweater pocket and walked to the door. Each step heavy, like walking toward a storm. When I opened it, Hannah was standing there with her arms folded. Michael behind her. Shoulders tight. Eyes avoiding mine. She held out her hand. "Your phone," she demanded. "We need to check who you're talking to." I felt a chill run through my body. "Why?" I whispered. She rolled her eyes. "Because you're probably lying to someone. Telling your little sob stories. And making us look like villains." My voice trembled. "Hannah, that phone is mine." She stepped closer, eyes burning. "Everything in this house will be ours soon enough. Hand it over." I looked at my son. His face was pale, conflicted. But he still whispered. "Just give it to her, Mom. She's not asking for much." Not asking for much. First my respect. Then my home. Now my privacy. They wanted to strip me of everything. One piece at a time. I took a slow breath. "No." Hannah's eyes widened. "What did you say?" I straightened my back. I said no. "You already humiliated me. You hit me. You locked me in my own house. You took my keys. But you will not take my phone." Michael stepped forward, his voice shaky. "Mom, please don't make this harder." I looked at him. Really looked at him. And whispered. "Harder for who, Michael? For you? Or for the conscience you're trying so hard to silence?" He flinched. Just a little. Just enough for me to see the boy he once was. The boy still trapped under Hannah's thumb. Hannah exhaled sharply. Then smiled that cruel smile of hers. "Fine. Keep the phone. You'll have no one to call soon anyway." And then she turned to Michael and said something that made my knees weaken. "Come on. We need to change the locks before she tries to escape." Change the locks. On my house. While I was still inside. My breath caught. They weren't just pushing me out. They were preparing to trap me. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heart pounding against my ribs. But I reminded myself of one thing. The one tiny thread of hope I still had. Margaret was on her way. And they had no idea. They walked away, whispering about locks and keys, leaving me alone in the hallway with my thoughts spiraling. My hands were shaking. Not from fear this time. From anger. Real, deep anger. The kind that grows when someone you love treats you like you don't matter. I went back into my bedroom and closed the door. My fingers wrapped around my phone like it was the last piece of my identity. I checked the screen. Margaret, leaving now. I'll be there in about an hour. An hour. 60 minutes. That was all I needed to survive. I paced my room, rehearsing what I would say to her. But before I could gather my thoughts, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Drill. Metal on wood. Screws turning. They were really doing it. They were actually changing the locks. While I was still inside the house, I raised my son in. I opened my door just a crack and peeked out. Hannah stood at the front door with a drill, smiling like she was redecorating for Christmas. Michael stood beside her, holding the new lock in his hands. Looking sick. Looking trapped. Looking like he couldn't believe this was his life now. But doing nothing to stop it. I stepped out into the hallway. "Hannah," I said, my voice shaking, "please don't do this." She didn't even turn. "Oh, Evelyn, relax. We're just making the house safer. For us." My voice cracked. "I live here too." She finally turned. "You did." Michael shifted uncomfortably, his guilt spilling from his eyes. But his mouth locked shut. I took a shaky breath. What if there's an emergency? What if I need to get out? Hannah shrugged. "You'll manage." And then she said the line that stabbed me straight through the heart. "If you want access, Evelyn, then leave. Move out willingly. We're not asking again." My knees almost buckled. They weren't just changing the locks. They were locking me out of my own life. Until I had no choice but to walk away. I stepped back slowly, my vision blurring, my heart breaking one beat at a time. And then, a sudden sound. A car pulling up outside. A door slamming. Fast footsteps on the porch. Michael froze. Hannah turned sharply. And before either of them reached the door, it swung open. And Margaret stepped inside. With a face full of fury. She looked at me first. Saw my swollen cheek. My red eyes. My trembling hands. And then turned to them like a storm ready to destroy everything in her path. "What the hell?" she said in a low, dangerous voice. "Have you done to Evelyn?" And for the first time in days, I felt safe. Margaret didn't walk into the house. She stormed in. Her eyes swept over the room. Then landed on the half-installed lock. The drill in Hannah's hand. And finally, on me. I saw her face change. Shock first. Then heartbreak. Then rage. Pure, protective rage. She walked straight to me and gently touched my cheek. Her fingers pausing over the faint mark Hannah left. "Oh my God, Evelyn," she whispered. "What did they do to you?" Before I could speak, Hannah stepped forward with her usual arrogance. "This is none of your business." Wrong thing to say. Margaret turned slowly, her expression colder than I had ever seen. "Excuse me," she said, voice low, steady, dangerous. "This woman is my blood. My family. What happens to her is very much my business." Michael swallowed hard. He looked small. Like a little boy again. But Margaret wasn't finished. She pointed at the door. "The new lock. The tools. You were changing the locks while she was still inside? Are you insane?" Hannah rolled her eyes. She was going to leave anyway. Margaret stepped closer. "She told you that? Or did you decide it for her?" Michael opened his mouth. But Margaret didn't give him the chance. "And you," she snapped. "You let your wife slap your mother?" His shoulders slumped. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. Margaret's voice shook as she said, "I knew you were drifting away, Michael. But I didn't know you lost your spine." Hannah gasped. But Margaret went on. "You don't talk to her. You don't look after her. You don't even respect her. But you want her house." Silence. A silence deeper than anything I'd heard in that home. Margaret then stepped back toward me. placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Evelyn, sweetheart," she said softly. "Pack a small bag. You're coming with me." My heart jumped. Leaving? Could I? Should I? Hannah exploded. "She's not going anywhere. She lives here." "No," Margaret cut her off sharply. "She doesn't. Not anymore. Not after what you've done." Then she turned to my son. "Michael, if you have even a shred of respect left for your mother, you won't stand in her way." He didn't say a word. Not yes. Not no. Just silence. And in that silence, I knew my decision was already made. Margaret held my hand as I walked toward my bedroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. I had lived in that house for 32 years. I had painted those walls, planted those roses, taken Michael's first baby steps across that hallway. And now, I was packing a bag like a visitor. I opened my closet and reached for a small suitcase. My hands trembled when I grabbed the handle. Not out of fear, but out of grief. Margaret stayed by the door, giving me space but not leaving me alone. She knew if she walked away, I might collapse. I folded a sweater, a photo frame, a pair of shoes. Every item I touched whispered a memory. Behind me, Margaret said softly, "You don't have to pack your whole life today. Just what you need. We'll come back later for the rest. When things calm down." But I knew things would never calm down. This house wasn't mine anymore. Not emotionally. Not safely. As I zipped the suitcase, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Hannah. Her voice was sharp, impatient. "So what? You're actually leaving? Running away?" I didn't answer her. I walked past her slowly, my suitcase rolling quietly behind me. She laughed, a cold, mocking laugh. "Good. Maybe now we can finally have our own life." Those words sliced deeper than the slap. But the moment I stepped into the living room, I saw Michael sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He didn't look up. Not once. Not even when I stood inches away from him. Waiting. Hoping. For a single word. An apology. A hug. "Mom, don't go." But he said nothing. Only Margaret spoke. "Cowardice looks awful on you, Michael." Hannah hissed. "You can't talk to my husband like." Margaret raised a hand to silence her. Then she turned to me. "Let's go, Evelyn." So I walked toward the front door. The same door where I once welcomed my son home from college. From his first job. From his wedding. Now I walked out of it, as a burden being released. When we reached the porch, I turned back one last time. Michael still hadn't looked at me. But from the window reflection, I saw something I wasn't expecting. He was crying. Silent, ashamed, hidden tears. But tears don't heal betrayal. Not anymore. I lifted my chin, took Margaret's arm, and stepped into a new life. A painful life, yes. But a freer one. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Margaret drove slowly, like she knew every bump in the road would hurt me. I stared out of the window the whole way, watching the town lights blur into soft streaks. My heart felt empty, like someone had scooped it out and left only the echo. When we reached Margaret's house, she helped me carry my suitcase inside. Her living room was warm, full of soft lamps and old books. A place that smelled like cinnamon and safety. But the moment the door closed behind us, The shock finally cracked. My knees buckled. And I sank onto her couch. Not crying out loud. Just shaking. Like grief was trapped inside my bones. Margaret sat beside me. And wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn," she whispered. "No mother deserves this." I held the blanket tighter. It felt like the first real comfort I had felt in years. I wanted to speak. But my voice came out like a broken whisper. "I raised him better than this." Margaret nodded softly. "I know you did. But sons don't always stay the men their mothers taught them to be." Her words were gentle. But they cut deep. I wiped my eyes and tried to steady my breath. That's when my phone buzzed. A message. From Michael. "Mom. I need time to think." That was all. No apology. No guilt. No warmth. Just a sentence that felt like a door slamming shut. I locked the phone without replying. Margaret placed a cup of warm tea in my hands. The steam rose quietly. Smelling like chamomile and honey. "You're safe here," she said. "And tomorrow. You're going to make a plan. Not to survive them. But to rebuild yourself." I nodded slowly. I didn't feel strong yet. Not even close. But sitting there, wrapped in a blanket. In a house where no one yelled. No one slapped. No one controlled. I felt the smallest spark come back. A tiny, trembling spark. The kind you need to start a new life. When I finally lay down to sleep in the guest room. The silence was strange. But for the first time in months. It wasn't frightening. It was peaceful. And before closing my eyes, I whispered only one sentence into the darkness. "I will not break because of them." Sunlight slipped through the guest room curtains. Soft and golden. A kind of light my old house never had anymore. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then everything came back. The slap. The shouting. Michael's cold silence. The moment I walked out of the home I built. My chest tightened. But it didn't crush me the way it did last night. I sat up slowly. Feeling older than my age. But strangely lighter too. Like someone had removed a heavy chain from my shoulders. Margaret knocked gently. "Good morning, sweetheart. I made breakfast. Come when you're ready." Her voice was soft. Careful. Like she understood exactly how fragile I felt. When I walked into her kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. She had made scrambled eggs and toast. Simple, but warm. Something my daughter-in-law hadn't done for me in years. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "A little." My voice cracked. She nodded. "That's enough for the first night." We ate quietly for a few minutes. Then Margaret put her hand on mine. Steady, firm. "Evelyn. If you want to go back there, I'll drive you. If you want to stay here, you can. And if you want to fight back. Legally, emotionally, financially. I'll stand right beside you." I looked at her, shocked. "Fight back?" She nodded again. "Your husband left you the house in his will. It's yours. Not Michael's. Not hers. If they're trying to push you out, you don't walk away. You defend what you built." A strange kind of strength rose inside me. Soft at first, then growing. All these years, I thought enduring was the only way. Surviving quietly. Tolerating hurt. But for the first time, the idea of fighting did not scare me. It steadied me. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I whispered. Margaret squeezed my hand. You don't need to be strong. You just need to stop being silent. Her words sat in my chest like a spark. A spark that might turn into fire. I didn't decide anything that morning. Not yet. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could decide. And that alone was a beginning. When I finally gathered myself, sitting on Margaret's couch with a warm blanket over my shoulders, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. Why did my daughter-in-law hate me so much? Margaret sat beside me. Because women like her, she said slowly, don't want mothers-in-law, they want full control. Her words hit me. And suddenly, every small moment from the past year came rushing back. The day my daughter-in-law told me, stop calling him so much, he has a wife now. The way she always answered my son's phone when I called. How she insisted that they needed privacy even when I wasn't interfering. How my son stopped visiting me after marriage, and she made excuses every time. It all connected into one painful truth. She didn't just slap me. She wanted to erase me. I felt my throat tighten. Margaret squeezed my hand. You didn't lose your son, she said softly. He's being controlled. But you'll get him back, once he sees who she really is. I wasn't sure. But for the first time since the slap, I felt a spark of strength inside me. Something was changing. And I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the slap, my son's silence, and the humiliation burning inside me. But one thing had changed. I was done being afraid. Margaret called a lawyer she knew, Mr. Collins, a calm, older attorney who listened to everything quietly. When I finished speaking, he said, Ma'am, she assaulted you. And she tried to forcefully take your home keys. You have every right to take legal action. My hands trembled. But this time, not from fear. From resolve. I nodded. Do whatever is needed. I'm not letting her destroy my life. By afternoon, a legal notice was drafted. Assault. Intimidation. Attempted illegal eviction. Emotional abuse. When the documents were delivered to my son's house, my phone rang within minutes. It was him. Mom, what did you do? I said calmly. I finally protected myself. There was silence, long, heavy, uncomfortable. Then he whispered. Mom. I didn't know it was this bad. His voice cracked. It was the first time in months I heard my real son, not the man shaped by his wife's manipulation. That evening, he came to see me, alone. His eyes were red, his face pale. Mom, she told me you hit her. She said you were becoming unstable. She made me believe you were the problem. My heart squeezed. I raised you better than this, I said softly. You should have looked into my eyes and asked me yourself. He broke down. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For the first time in months, he hugged me, tight, desperate, broken. But the truth wasn't done revealing itself. Because right then, his wife arrived, furious. You filed a notice against me? You can't do this. My son turned toward her, his voice steady for the first time. Enough. I saw the camera footage. She froze. The slap, the screaming, everything. It's over. Her confidence shattered instantly. Mr. Collins arrived moments later to collect her statement. She panicked. I didn't mean to hurt her. My son stopped her. Mom could have pressed full charges. But she didn't. Her eyes widened. You have two options, the lawyer said calmly. Sign a written apology, or face court. shaking, crying, humiliated. She signed. And just like that, the storm that had destroyed my peace for months, finally broke. A week later, my son came home with 2 suitcases. "Mom," he said quietly. "Can I come back? Just for some time, until I get my head straight?" I smiled softly. "Son, this will always be your home." He hugged me, longer, warmer, more genuine than ever before. The guilt in his eyes was deep, but his sincerity was real. We cooked dinner together. We talked. We laughed a little. For the first time in months, my house felt like a home again. Later that night, he took my hand. "I promise. I'll never let anyone treat you that way again." And for the first time since that awful slap, my heart finally rested. Justice was served. And my son came back to me.